On this Wednesday night, Ukraine's retaliation could ramp up. The weapons it can now use to hit back at Russia after Russia strikes a kindergarten. A plea to the federal government from wildfire survivors.
Don't let Canada burn.
The three things they're asking for. Major failures, the Louvre's director on the lapses that allowed that daring heist to happen. Plus, money on the mound.
This feels like a once-in-a-lifetime kind of thing.
The businesses banking on a windfall from the World Series.
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Hours after the U.S. president shelved plans for a second meeting with Russia's president, Russia launched an intense attack on Ukraine. At least 7 people were killed, including 2 children. Rescuers carried survivors to safety after a kindergarten in Kharkiv took a direct hit. Children are among the 27 injured in the attacks. Ukraine's president says there can be no justification for hitting a school and that it is proof more pressure needs to be put on Russia. This afternoon, the Trump administration did lift a key restriction on Ukraine's use of some long-range missiles provided by Western allies, missiles that are capable of striking deep into Russia. Jackson Proskow has our top story.
The Russian strike on a kindergarten in Kharkiv sent parents scrambling to rescue their children. In Kyiv, Russian missiles struck apartment buildings, killing residents, while waves of drones targeted civilian infrastructure, plunging thousands into the dark. For Ukrainians, there's no sign Russia wants peace. I don't believe in these negotiations. I don't see an end to any of this, says this woman. But NATO's Secretary General isn't giving up.
Well, I have total confidence in President Trump, and he's the only one who can get this done.
In Washington, he met with U.S. President Donald Trump after a promised peace summit between Trump and Russia's Vladimir Putin was called off.
When we canceled the meeting with President Putin, it didn't feel right to me. It didn't feel like we were going to get to the place we have to get, so I canceled it.
Upping the pressure on Putin, the U.S. is also joining with the EU in leveling new sanctions against the Russian economy.
We hope that they won't be on for long. We hope that the war will be settled.
It's another abrupt turn for Trump, who just last week promised to meet with Putin following a meeting with Ukraine's president, where Trump backed off plans to give Ukraine American long-range Tomahawk missiles to appease the Russians.
So being the last person Trump talks to is a huge deal in Trump's decision-making.
Ukraine has made it clear it's willing to stop the fighting along current battle lines, a major concession that Trump reportedly demanded.
I think that was good compromise, but I'm not sure that Putin will support it, and I said it to the president.
But the Kremlin has said it won't agree to a ceasefire without first securing a peace deal, meaning no talks for now. As missiles and drones continue to fall on Ukraine, it seems Trump may have come to realize Russia won't make a deal without serious pressure. Jackson Proskow, Global News, Washington.
The Canadian government has quietly shelved a plan to send refurbished Canadian armored vehicles to Ukraine. The defense minister isn't saying why. David McGuinty says he is not in a position to explain, but confirms a decision was made to nullify the contract with Armatech Survivability in Ontario. It does not appear the deal for 25 light armored vehicles was announced publicly, and it's unclear how much it was worth. Canada is in the process of delivering new armored vehicles for Ontario-based General Dynamics land systems to Ukraine. The International Court of Justice says Israel has a legal obligation to facilitate the delivery of aid to Gaza by the UN aid agency known as UNRWA. In January, Israel banned UNRWA from operating in Gaza, accusing it of being infiltrated by Hamas. And in March, Israel cut off aid shipments to Gaza for 3 months. The ICJ says Israel has not substantiated its allegations and must facilitate UNRWA's relief schemes. It is a legal opinion. It's non-binding. Israel quickly rejected it as political, insisting it will not cooperate with UNRWA, and it continues to restrict aid deliveries to Gaza. The European Union and Egypt are seeking closer ties, holding their first summit in Brussels today. Egypt's president and the EU Commission president are meeting for 3 days. The talks are aimed at forging closer political and economic partnerships in the face of U.S. tariffs, along with global challenges like the war in Ukraine and the push for peace in the Middle East. A senior Trump administration official says the White House is now demolishing the entire East Wing to make way for the president's $200 million ballroom. When Trump first announced the plans for the ballroom, he pledged the East Wing wouldn't be touched by the construction. The official, who was not authorized to speak publicly, says the teardown should be finished by this weekend and that the administration determined it was cheaper and more structurally sound to tear down that entire East Wing. Canada's Prime Minister delivered a speech tonight that outlined in broad strokes his economic plans for the country ahead of his first federal budget. Mark Carney says it is time to take big, bold risks to chart a new course for the country, and that along with spending on things like defense, there will have to be sacrifices, saying we will have to do less of some of the things we want to do so that we can do more of what we must do. Mackenzie Gray reports.
Ahead of his first budget, Mark Carney made a vow politicians rarely do.
I want to make this promise to Canadians. I will always be straight about the challenges that we face and the choices that we must make.
The challenge, Donald Trump, and the choice to pivot away.
Our goal for Canada is to double our non-U.S. exports over the course of the next decade.
To do that, Carney promised his upcoming budget will have new apprenticeship and skills training programs. A new immigration plan will be announced, and there'll be a climate competitiveness strategy. Details to come on November 4th.
We used to take big, bold risks in this country. It is time to swing for the fences again.
There were many other sports metaphors in Carney's nearly 30-minute speech to University of Ottawa students, promising a new game plan for how the country's finances are calculated.
The upcoming budget will balance the operating deficit in 3 years by reducing wasteful government spending and doing more with less.
But that isn't a true balanced budget, with the Carney government planning to spend big on projects they believe will spur economic growth. Carney said there'd be a $62 billion deficit during the campaign, but with billions less in counter-tariff revenue and an accelerated defense spending timeline, some private sector economists are now estimating a $100 billion deficit.
Think you can find common ground with the Prime Minister on the budget?
I hope we do.
To get any of this done, Carney needs the support of at least one opposition party.
Is there anything to change your mind?
And after meeting with the Conservatives, it seems unlikely Pierre Poilievre will support the budget.
We had a good conversation. He didn't make any commitments. And so I'm looking forward to seeing what he comes up with.
Carney's speech, an attempt to frame his first parliamentary challenge in advance of a nearly 2-week trip to Asia. And while the Prime Minister might be promising a grand vision, he asked for patience.
It will take some sacrifices, and it will take some time.
Carney hasn't said what those sacrifices will be, but a public service cut is likely one of them. The Liberals have promised a 15% cut to public services over a 3-year period, with a 7.5% cut coming in this budget. But details on how deep and where those cuts are, Donna, won't be public until the budget is tabled on November 4th.
We'll find out then. Mackenzie Gray, thank you. The deficit and how big it might get is getting a lot of attention ahead of the budget. The financial group Desjardins put out a report today projecting the deficit could rise to the highest it's been in about 30 years. If that is accurate, how much does it matter? Our senior business correspondent, Anne Gaviola, is with me. Anne, can you put this into context for us?
Donna, Desjardins looked at everything that's been announced by the Carney government and compiled its projections. It estimates the federal deficit will hit nearly $75 billion this fiscal year, which is $6 billion higher than the Parliamentary Budget Office's projections. The PBO's calculations don't include items that have only been telegraphed but haven't been enacted, so that explains that difference. Now, we won't know for sure until we get all the details with a federal budget on November 4th.
We've heard rumors that the federal deficit may be as large as $100 billion. We can't get there with the numbers that have been put forward so far, but anything's possible.
These all sound like big numbers, Donna, and based on Desjardins' calculations, we're likely to see a deficit number that we haven't seen since Jean Chrétien was Prime Minister. But it is important to remember that other G7 countries are also running deficits, with large numbers expected in the US and UK, about $1.7 trillion and $72 billion, respectively. And investors, including the bond market, don't look at Canada without factoring in that global context. So we're not likely to be punished for it, especially because this has been widely telegraphed ahead of time. Not too many surprises, though, and that could change. In the context of Canadian history, the last balanced budget was under Paul Martin in 1998, and the last budget surplus under Stephen Harper in 2015. Deficits have been the name of the game in all other years since. Donna?
All right, Angeviola in Toronto, thanks. A BC-based cryptocurrency exchange has been fined a record $177 million by FINTRAC, Canada's financial intelligence agency. Zeltox Enterprises, which operates Cryptomus, was fined for failing to flag more than 1,000 transactions that had suspected links to criminal activity, including trafficking in child sexual abuse material, fraud, ransomware payments, and sanctions evasion. The company has a Vancouver address, but FINTRAC found it had no Canadian employees. FINTRAC requires businesses ranging from banks to real estate agents and casinos to report financial transactions meeting specific criteria. In Ontario, a suspect at the center of a brazen daylight shooting and child abduction has been shot and killed by police. It happened at a gas station in Niagara Falls early this morning.
There was an interaction involving the man and the officers, and then there was a discharge of a firearm at the man. The man was struck multiple times. Paramedics were summoned and first aid was provided, and the man was pronounced deceased at the scene.
Officers had been searching for 38-year-old Anthony DeShepper, who was wanted in a suspected case of intimate partner violence. That involved the shooting death of a woman in a Brampton parking lot on Tuesday. Police say DeShepper fled the scene with his 1-year-old child in the back seat. An Amber Alert was briefly issued before the child was found safe later in the day. After another devastating wildfire season, a group of fire victims is joining firefighters in a call for more support. The group is in Ottawa this week, advocating for improvements to how Canada responds to wildfires and works to prevent them. Heather Yourex-West reports.
2.5 years ago, Jennifer Saulnier's life was forever changed.
Alone with my dog, I unexpectedly fled for my life. Trapped in my subdivision with flames closing in.
The Upper Tantallon wildfire destroyed more than 150 homes in the Halifax area back in the spring of 2023.
That experience, being in what felt like a living nightmare, losing everything while trying to survive and escape, will stay with me forever, as it will for so many other people.
It's why she, along with a group of firefighters and other wildfire survivors, are in Ottawa this week advocating for change.
Today we're delivering thousands of petitions from Canadians with a simple, urgent message. Don't let Canada burn.
The group says it's asking the federal government for 3 important things: a doubling in federal funding for wildfire fighting training and equipment, sustained year-round federal leadership in wildfire readiness and response, and more investments in clean power as a means of tackling the root causes of Canada's escalating fire seasons.
The fact is, our system was built for force before climate change.
While wildfire fighting falls under provincial jurisdiction, firefighters like Harold Larson say there is a desperate need for a more sustained, coordinated response and better support for those on the front lines.
Most wildland firefighters don't come back after a season or two. Veterans are scattered. Inexperienced firefighters are asked to lead rookies.
The group plans to meet this week with the federal environment minister and with MPs representing the Liberals, Conservatives, Greens and NDP, calling for help with a crisis that every Canadian province or territory has come to know now all too well. Heather Yourex-West, Global News, Calgary.
A for-profit group home in Winnipeg has been fined $35,000 after pleading guilty to providing marijuana to teenagers in its care. Criminal charges were dropped against the 4 owners. In an agreed statement of facts, the court heard Spirit Rising House used cannabis as part of its harm reduction strategy for high-risk teens. The marijuana was not prescribed, and the child welfare agency that had legal guardianship of the children was not consulted. Spirit Rising House Group homes shut down in March of 2024. Another step in the road to reconciliation coming up, what the Vatican says it will do with dozens of Indigenous artifacts. Three years after it was first promised, the Vatican is now preparing to unveil a plan to return several artifacts to Canadian Indigenous communities. The Vatican museums hold thousands of relics. Many Indigenous items were taken by Catholic missionaries, and First Nations have long called for them to be returned. Jillian Piper explains the plan.
After a century on display, some of these items could be heading home to Indigenous communities in Canada. The Vatican is expected to announce a plan soon to return a few dozen Indigenous artifacts from its museum as part of its reckoning with the Catholic Church's role in colonization.
This is really bittersweet. My big question is, why do we have to wait so long?
The move, long overdue for Amy Parent, a UNESCO co-chair in Indigenous Knowledge Research Governance and Rematriation, who points to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's calls to return these objects back in 2015.
The Vatican is only now catching up to what's already been known, documented, and demanded.
In 2022, while at the Vatican to receive Pope Francis's apology for the Church's role in residential schools, a delegation of Indigenous leaders also asked for the items back.
Diversi nei figli.
Pope Francis promised to return thousands of artifacts, but that decision now rests with Pope Leo.
I was part of those conversations when I accompanied Prime Minister Carney to Rome for Pope Leo's inaugural Mass, and I think it's a really good step for Canadian cardinals and the Catholic Church.
The items are expected to be sent to the Canadian Museum of History in Gatineau, Quebec, where Indigenous groups will try to decipher their origins.
The apology was a first step, but also ensuring that the Catholic Church are also creating awareness around what happened during the residential schools is part of the calls to action, and that's some of the things we have to do besides returning the artifacts.
While there is no official timeline yet, Donna, the Associated Press is reporting Vatican and Canadian officials say the items could arrive on Canadian soil before the end of the year.
All right, Jillian Piper in Ottawa, thanks. Next, an update on that brazen theft at the Louvre. The museum director answers questions about a cascade of security failures. The U.S. has released video showing what it says is a lethal strike on a drug boat in the eastern Pacific Ocean last night. The U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth says the U.S. military hit a vessel suspected of links to a terrorist organization and drug trafficking. He says it was traveling along a known route for traffickers and was carrying narcotics, though he provided no evidence. Both people on board were killed. It is the 8th strike by the U.S. on a suspected drug smuggling boat since the start of September. In Paris, the Louvre reopened to the public today, and the museum's director acknowledged a terrible failure in security allowed thieves to steal the crown jewels of France.
Les faiblesses de notre protection périmétrique sont connues et identifiées.
The weaknesses of the protection of our perimeter is known, she admitted. The Louvre director said security cameras were not pointed at the balcony where the thieves broke in. She called the lack of surveillance highly insufficient and offered to resign. The robbers' vehicle had been pulled up right to the building for 2 hours, facing the wrong way in traffic. The men appeared to be doing maintenance work before shattering a window, which set off alarms. The museum was open at the time. A visitor captured videos of the suspects using an angle grinder to cut through the glass encasements, stealing 8 French crown jewels worth over $100 million. They were out just 4 minutes later and escaped on scooters. The Apollo Gallery housing the jewels is now closed to the public, and $130 million of security upgrades are planned for the Louvre, which also houses the Mona Lisa. There has been a terrible bus crash in western Uganda. At least 46 people are dead and dozens of others are injured. It happened just after midnight on a busy highway. Investigators say 2 buses traveling in opposite directions met head-on while both were trying to overtake 2 other vehicles. Fatal road crashes are not uncommon in Uganda, where roads are often narrow. In Nigeria, a fuel tanker overturned and exploded, killing at least 35 people. The vehicle skidded off the road and crashed, causing gas to spill. People were rushing to scoop it up when the fuel ignited. Witnesses say the road was riddled with potholes and the driver lost control. Blue Jays boost. Next, how Toronto businesses are hoping the World Series will bring them big bucks. Ontario Premier Doug Ford says he is fed up with how Blue Jays tickets are being snapped up on Ticketmaster and then immediately resold for exorbitant prices. He says he's considering legislation to prevent it.
They're gouging the people. When you have one player in the market that controls the tickets, that's not right for the people.
Original tickets to the World Series between the Blue Jays and the LA Dodgers sold out within minutes. Many are now being resold for thousands of dollars above face value. The anger about resales is not new. In 2019, Ford's government scrapped legislation that would have imposed a cap on reselling, saying it was unenforceable. Toronto could host as many as 4 of those World Series games if the series ends up going to 7 games. And local businesses are hoping to cash in. Nicole DiDonato looks at whether it could be an economic home run for the city.
It's not just the Rogers Centre that will be packed with fans Friday for Game 1 of the World Series. The Pint Public House, just steps from the Dome, is a go-to spot for Jays fans throughout the season, but the playoffs are a whole different ballgame.
Right now it's all hands on deck.
The pub has been at capacity for each game, and during the World Series, it's expecting to hit a home run in sales.
Having all this playoff Blue Jay action happening through October allow us to bridge the summer with the holiday season, so it's not that much of a slump in business.
In fact, businesses all over the Greater Toronto area are hoping to get a taste of sweet success. Short and Sweet Bake Shop in North York is selling special Blue Jays World Series cupcakes.
This feels, like a once-in-a-lifetime kind of thing.
The bake shop launched the limited edition treats on Tuesday, and the interest has been through the roof.
It's just been bananas. The DMs are crazy. The online orders are crazy. The phone orders are coming in.
Destination Toronto says the whole city stands to benefit from the Jays World Series run. It notes hotel demand for Game 2 of the American League Division Series increased by 22%, which is about 3,500 additional room nights. Welcome to the Eras Tour. The last time Toronto hosted an event of this magnitude was for Taylor Swift's 6 sold-out Eras Tour shows last November, which generated more than $280 million in economic impact. But Destination Toronto believes the World Series will bring even more business.
That's because while there were many visitors that came for those concerts, you wouldn't have the same effect of people then being in the bars and the restaurants and the watch parties, experiencing that at the same time.
Nicole DiDonato, Global News, Toronto.
That is Global National for this Wednesday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada showcases Bedford, Nova Scotia, Canmore, Alberta, and Whitehorse, Yukon. Please keep them coming. Send your pictures of Canadian pride to Global National at globalnews.ca. And thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Bye-bye.